In all my years of making YouTube videos, all 5.5 of them, oh sweet lord, I'm ancient, I have never been more nervous to discuss the topic in today's video, especially since, well, the animation director of the show is subscribed to me now. That is super cool, and it kind of makes me super proud of myself that someone I look up to so much actually watched some of my videos, but it also makes me insanely nervous since there's a real chance an important figure in the show's creation might hear what I have to say. So, naturally, it's time to push my #1 matchup as hard as physically possible. Jokes aside, if you are watching, Luis, you're awesome. I love your work. Keep doing what you're doing, big guy. Moving on to what we're actually here for, in case you didn't know, the Death Battle Ballot is back this year, and we get to vote for a matchup again. Last year, in case you didn't know, I backed Chie vs. Mako as my ballot choice. Still love the match, and I still hope it happens, but this year we're going to be backing a more recent favorite of mine. Instead of just saying it flat out, here's a cool trailer I had our favorite Gengar make for me. Now that, my friends, is peak fiction. This year, the matchup I will be pushing is Edward Elric versus Lysithea Von Ordelia, Fullmetal Alchemist versus Fire Emblem. The remainder of this video will be split into 3 separate sections. The overall connections of the fight, any specific logistics covering any potential issues the showrunners might have with making the episode, and overall giving my responses to try to justify it, and lastly, my general hopes for the episode and what I would like to see if it ever got made.
Is that me? Is that me stronger than me? I'll f***ing kill me!
First up is connections, because what's a death battle match without those juicy character traits or story beats that drive us to stab a complete stranger? For starters, both characters are prodigies that hyper-focus on their goals, even to the detriment of their own physical health. Both suffered from a blood-related experiment that stunted their growth. Both have a time limit to complete their goals, or a life will be lost. Lysithea's own life, and Edward's little brother's lives, to be specific. Both goals are related to their closest remaining family members. Lysithea wanting to create a world where her parents can live in peace, and Edward wanting to restore his little brother Alphonse's body. Both have a disdain for tall people and have explosive reactions when confronted on their size or being called a child. Both, thanks to their blood-related experiments, have a new power that was thought to be impossible. Edward's clappy alchemy, aka his alchemy doesn't require a transmutation circle, and Lysithea has 2 crests. Both fight an evil organization that operates from below the ground, manipulating the world above from the shadows. Both, despite their hardship, will still forgive others that wronged them, and even are willing to work with shady people to accomplish their goals. Both can use their power to enhance blades to fight with, Edward with his metal arm, and Lysithea can use the Soul Blade combat art to enchant a sword with magical energy. Both have funny reactions to certain foods, Edward with milk and Lysithea with candy. And lastly, both by the end of their story lose their new blood-related powers and return to a somewhat normal life with their new respective love interests. Well, unless you don't have Lysithea marry male Byleth or Linhardt, in which case she dies. That was a lot to go over, but it goes to show that Ed and Lysithea have a lot in common.
Why isn't it possible?
It's just not.
Why not, you stupid bastard?
After Dimitri vs. Guts introduced Fire Emblem to the show, it got me thinking about what other Fire Emblem matchups I would like to see in the future. Plenty came to mind, like, say, Ike vs. Siegfried, Byleth vs. the Traveler from Genshin Impact, Edelgard vs. Kylo Ren, and plenty of other cool and interesting concepts, but a major issue that I ran into with most of these matchups is that they only feature the Lord characters. Don't get me wrong, the Lords are a major part of the game, and I definitely want a majority of them to get on the show at some point. But the regular army units also deserve some of that love. Lysithea vs. Edward fits that real niche appeal in a Fire Emblem matchup to me. Lysithea is certainly an important character to Three Houses' story, but she isn't a Lord. Plus, like, the only other matchup that comes to mind that was even kind of close to it was Azura versus Mipha. But then again, Azura's in that weird, like, semi-Lord status the whole Fates Royal family is in, so I don't know how much it counts. Another concern I could see the team having is popularity slash relevance. Fire Emblem has never been the biggest series, but hey, Three Houses did sell 4 million copies, and Lysithea, like Dimitri, is from the most popular game in the series. Lysithea also has the distinction of being arguably the most popular non-Lord unit. Here is the in-game deployment list, ranking what units were the most deployed worldwide. Lysithea ranks second overall behind Dorothea, and when the Fire Emblem community got to vote in the Fire Emblem Heroes Choose Your Legends 4 ballot, aka the thing the mobile game does when fans can vote for them to make a legendary version of a certain unit, the 4 units chosen were the 3 main lords of Three Houses and Lysithea. This was the first time Three Houses units could be voted for, and they swept the podium. Lysithea also has 4 versions of herself in Heroes, one more than Dorothea, who also got a 22nd place in the vote. Meanwhile, Lysithea got second. Again, best part of this joke is, I assure you Edelgard will get on this show before she does. Regardless, Lysithea, popularity-wise, is on par with the other 3 lords. And if you're doing a Fire Emblem matchup anyway, popularity shouldn't be an issue with Lysithea, as she's easily one of the most recognizable characters in the series. Another concern I could see them having is models, since I'm unsure if Death Battle would be willing to make a custom model for a Fire Emblem episode. Thankfully, Lysithea and Edward both have great 3D models, so it isn't that much of a concern. I wouldn't mind a sprite fight, mind you, but if the budget is an issue, 3D will work just fine, if not better, for the 2 of them. Lastly, why have Edward return? Because yeah, there are a ton of Death Battle combatants that could really use another episode. Say Pikachu from Season 1. Spawn's the one that comes up to mind. Basically any episode that was from Seasons 1 through 4, you could arguably justify it for pretty much any character. Before Season 9, dear God, Vegeta. And people might say, well, Edward was from Season 6. He's not even, that old of a combatant. Is he really worthy for a run back? In my opinion, Edward deserves to have an episode that does him justice. His fight with Aang, while technically fine, isn't held to the highest standard by the community. It's in fact often referred to as the worst episode out of Season 6, or even more harshly, referred to as the one bad episode in Season 6. Edward's anime is so often called one of the best, if not the best anime people have ever watched, and as someone who watched it this year, I can agree. Edward deserves to have an episode that does him justice, and doesn't have him making the same short joke all fight. Don't get me wrong, it is a funny bit, and I do enjoy it, but it's not his whole character. I say that, but I still want him to have the fight start with Lysithea calling him short, and then have him countering with calling her a child. The One Punch Man bit, just do that, and we're good. Easiest justification you can have for a fight for these 2. Getting ahead of myself again, but in closing, Edward deserves an episode that truly tackles him as a character, and Lysithea is probably the best fit he'll find in that regard. I already talked about the opening of the fight, but I'd also like to see Lysithea's dark magic class with Edward's alchemy. Dark Spikes versus Ed's giant cannon, as portrayed in a buddy of mine's fan art he made for the matchup. I love to see Ed try to getting close, thinking he would have an advantage up close, only for Lysithea to counter with the Soul Blade combat art. You could have a bunch of cool shots of Lysithea using her limited flight to fly around while Edward creates pillars or stone hands trying to grab her like he does in the first episode. Maybe have a Destruction Alchemy versus Lethality clash, since Lysithea can technically get the skill. But I get that they might want to stick to the more canonical stuff, so I can understand them not using it. But then again, the entire point of Three Houses is to allow you to build your own kind of cracked up version of each unit. They're all essentially villagers, so you could argue it either way, but it's up to the team whatever they want to do. To end the fight, if Lysithea wins, you gotta end it with Dark Spikes. That spell is half the reason the girl is as popular as she is. Thank you, Mr. Death Knight, for being so very nukeable. If Ed wins, I'd say keep it tame. Ed has a strict no-killing rule in his show. One of the actual connections he had with Aang that you didn't capitalize on last time. So it really shouldn't be over the top. Then maybe have him reflect and feel guilt for killing another prodigy like himself. It's my new most requested episode, and hey, we had 3 returners in a row this season, so who knows? Ed might be back before I know it. And if he returns, I pray Lysithea will be duking it out with him. If you guys want to help support the matchup, feel free to give it a heart on the ballot in the Death Battle Discord. And if you want, make it your Death Battle ballot pick. Post about it on Twitter with hashtag Death Battle Ballot. Make fan art of it if you feel so inclined. Comment in the Death Battle comment section on YouTube, or discuss it in the Fire Emblem matchup thread on their Discord. Just please be respectful and civil towards the team wherever you choose to show your support. I have no high delusions of grandeur that this episode will suddenly take off and win the whole thing, but this is our opportunity to show off the match, to get people talking about it, and maybe to get the team potentially interested in it. With all that being said, This has been Tenton. Peace, my friends. Ed versus Sith gang, represent.